So, folks, during today's Judiciary Committee hearing to examine the gun violence epidemic, Texas Senator Ted Cruz decided to attack Democrats instead of staying on the topic of gun violence. Ooh, let's just say it got real interesting.
We are at yet another hearing called by Democrats on gun control. Understand that today's Democrats in the Senate, these are not your father's Democrats. There are no moderate Democrats left in Congress. Today's Democrats, when it comes to guns, their objective is to disarm law-abiding citizens. They simultaneously embrace policies that release violent criminals from jail. They're not interested in locking up murderers. They're not interested in locking up gangbangers. They're not interested in locking up violent criminals. Instead, they systematically support policies that release violent criminals. By the way, if you are hesitant to believe me when I say this, perhaps you'll believe the mayor of Dallas. The mayor of Dallas, Eric Johnson, who's a friend, he's a lifelong Democrat. He's African-American mayor, elected in Dallas, been a Democrat his whole life until just recently. He left the Democrat Party and became a Republican. Now, let me read you why Mayor Johnson became a Republican. Quote, "Unfortunately, many of our cities are in disarray. Mayors and other local elected officials have failed to make public safety a priority or to exercise fiscal restraint. Most of these local leaders are proud Democrats who view cities as laboratories for liberalism rather than as havens for opportunity and free enterprise. Too often, local tax dollars are spent on policies that exacerbate homelessness, coddle criminals, and make it harder for ordinary people to make a living. And too many local Democrats insist on virtue signaling, proposing half-baked government programs that aim to solve every single societal ill and on finding new ways to thumb their noses at Republicans at the state and federal level." I have to say to an ordinary person, the political ideology of today's Democrats makes no sense. Why your priority is disarming a law-abiding citizen, but not going after the violent criminal. And to be clear, it is the radical left that advocates abolishing the police and defunding the police. And when I say there are no moderate Democrats left, the Biden administration has nominated not one, not two, but three of the leading advocates of abolishing the police to senior positions at the U.S. Department of Justice. Every single Democrat on this committee voted to confirm every single one of them, but not just on this committee. Every single Democrat in the United States Senate voted to confirm all three of the Biden nominees, including Rachel Roland, nominated by the U.S. Attorney in Massachusetts, one of the leading advocates of abolishing the police, as a local prosecutor. She put out a list of violent crimes that she wouldn't prosecute. You know what? We're not having a hearing on the impact of Soros prosecutors releasing violent criminals from jail. We're not having a hearing on carjacking in Washington, D.C., because the Democrat City Council lowered the penalty for carjacking, lowered the penalty for murder. We're not having a hearing on Congressman Henry Cuellar, a Democrat from Texas, who was carjacked in Washington, D.C. at 9:30 at night. We're also not having a hearing on the Antifa and Black Lives Matter riots across the country, because to Democrats, when stores are being looted, when police cars are being firebombed, when police officers are being murdered, that's not a crisis if they agree with the ideology of the criminals. Instead, their objective is they want to take away the firearm from the single mom who's taking the subway home at night, who that is the only prevention she has against the violent criminals that the Democrats are unleashing. And by the way, to give you an underscoring of it, look, we have a mental health crisis in this country. I've repeatedly introduced legislation to improve school safety, to invest to double the number of police officers in schools. Democrats objected. To invest $15 billion in mental health counselors in schools. Democrats objected. Their priority is not stopping the criminals. Their priority is disarming law-abiding citizens. And by the way, they call it a public health crisis because they want to put supposed experts in charge of disarming you. The Second Amendment in the Bill of Rights is not a public health crisis. What is a public health crisis is the crime rates that are skyrocketing because Democrats keep letting murderers and violent criminals out of jail. But Dr. Ranney, let me ask you a question in terms of public health. Right now today, what's the leading cause of death for Americans age 18 to 45?
I believe that it's opioids.
It is drug overdoses. Last year, more than 100,000 Americans died of drug overdoses. 70% of that came from Chinese fentanyl that is flooding across our southern border because this administration has opened up our southern border to 8.6 million illegal immigrants, has enriched the drug traffickers. Do you think, Dr. Ranney, that fentanyl flooding across our open border on the south that has killed collectively 100,000 overdoses last year, do you think that's a public health crisis?
Absolutely. Synthetic fentanyl is a major crisis, and Senator Reid from my home state of Rhode Island has been a leader in trying to stop the supply of synthetic fentanyl.
Except he hasn't, because Senator Reid, along with every other Democrat, supports Joe Biden's open borders, because when we try to secure the borders, they block it over and over and over again. And the criminals who come across, who are taking people's lives, that is because the Democrats refuse to enforce the law.
Yeah, wonka, 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 wonka. But if you think that's a fool right there, wait till you hear this fool, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, who tried to come after that witness, Megan Ranney. Roland.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think that Chicago has become America's largest outdoor shooting range? Do you think it's because of Chicago citizens who have no criminal record, but who have lawfully a gun in their home for protection or perhaps for hunting? Or do you think it's because of a finite group of criminals who have rap sheets as long as King Kong's arm?
So Mississippi, Louisiana, and Missouri actually have higher firearm death rates. Obviously, there's certain...
What about Chicago?
So I don't live in Chicago. It's not my primary area of research.
You don't have an opinion on that?
I think there's easy access to firearms combined with environmental conditions, lack of great education. There have actually been studies showing that when you green vacant lots and repair abandoned buildings in urban neighborhoods, you see decreases in gunshots, in violence, as well as in stress and depression in the neighborhoods around them.
No disrespect, Doc, but that sounds a lot like word salad to me.
Yeah, because you're an idiot. That's why, with a fake-ass accent. Y'all know it's a fake-ass accent. He purposely wants to sound like a Southern hick. That's not how he talked when he was a Democrat. Yeah, seriously. What you heard right there was just perfect, Joe. Oh, let's focus on Chicago. She went, higher Mississippi, Louisiana, your state. What about Chicago? How about you focus on the state your punk ass from?
That's right. I mean, it's an interesting thing. You know, you have folks in the southern states that talk about freedom and talk about opportunity and hands off and all of these other things. But the fact of the matter is, those states have some of the poorest outcomes. They have some of the poorest educational outcomes. They're some of the poorest states. Those of us in California and other liberal states tend to pay a lot for them, more than they pay for us, as it were. And yes, as it turns out, there is a lot more in terms of free-wielding gun possession, gun violence, and all of these other things that are going on in ways that they want to overlook. You know, you either have Ted Cruz, somebody who's technically intelligent, but doesn't have a whole lot of common sense and wants to steer the discussion into having something else. Or you've got, John Kennedy and Tommy Tuberville, who, I'm not always sure that they can actually spell their names. They're actually not very smart at all. And so the fact of the matter is, you have to, separate the wheat from the chaff a bit here. This slow drawl or this fast intellect, Harvard educated, but no common sense. Racist tendencies, ignoring dealing with the immigration problem, where a whole lot of people that are coming to this country because it's a shining city on the hill, people that look like Ted Cruz and John Kennedy employ all the time, which is why they keep coming. You have to either create a pathway or figure out what's going on. You cannot put everybody in jail. You can put everybody in jail and win elections, but you're not going to put everybody in jail and solve problems, particularly when a lot of the folks that you put in jail, you put in jail for nonviolent offenses, or you put in jail because they're people of color, more likely to be put in jail, to be in those situations because they don't have the resources. So once again, it's them talking out of each side of their mouths and not doing what it is that they need to do.
They sit here and just run their mouth, but they love talking about Chicago, Randy. But he don't want to talk about New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, he ain't trying to talk about that. I mean, really, it's just, to me, such racist rhetoric. And anyone who, they don't even try to hide it. It's so disgusting. They always want to talk about Chicago. And it's always, they want to me, act as if Black people are the ones who are the problems with the guns, and that, everybody, these white women, to me, is the way it sounds, are coming home and trying to just be home safely and protect themselves. They never want to mention, who's doing the most mass murders and things like that. Just clear cut racism, in my opinion. And the way, and then even with the opioid epidemic, it's not because the pharmaceutical companies that they very much are funded by are the issue. It's coming over from China. And that's the issue. Like, there is no responsibility whatsoever. There's like these good old boy Americans who want to not take accountability for any issues whatsoever. And they want to steer everyone away from actually doing the research and finding out what's going on, particularly in their states. And just, it's like the Fox News, just focus on the headlines that are wrong. The same story over and over again. They make me sick. I can't believe that Cruz isn't in Mexico. Like, he usually runs away when there's something important to talk about.
Bottom line here, Toron, is this is the game that they play. And this is where, with witnesses, you got to sit here and say, yep, we're going to bring up your state. We're going to bring up cities in your state. And so, again, this is the game they love to play. And this is no different than when I decimated and destroyed Philip from Indianapolis. And really, he was from a suburb in Indianapolis. When he kept bringing up Chicago, I was like, but you can't focus on Indianapolis. Bottom line is, when they say Chicago, that's their new N-word. Chicago is their new N-word.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? That hearing wasn't even about trying to get to the bottom of a crisis or getting to real information. Cruz and Senator Kennedy were playing to their base. That's stuff that's what they were doing, was putting together as talking points and sound bites and fodder that they can take back to their constituents and say, see, I'm fighting for you. Now, when I say I'm fighting for you, I don't mean you brown people and you Black people. I mean you scared people who are nervous about these boogeymen coming over the border. That's really all I heard over the whole conversation from both of them. It's basically setting up a scenario where you had this image of the scared white woman on the train, like from Death Wish or something like that, scared of these Black people and these brown men that are to come and take advantage of her, a violator. That's what that's about. It's about scaring the hell out of the people who listen to you. And we have to be honest, though, even though it sounds ridiculous, there is a very large base of people who swallow that rhetoric and believe in it. And I can't believe the other guy I'm not really familiar with, but he sounds like Foghorn Leghorn, or the white man that was on In the Heat of the Night. Not the sheriff, but the one that Sidney Poitier had to deal with on the movie when he slapped him and stuff like that. It's like, Mr. Endicott, he sounded like that. I'm like, and you're saying that's a fake accent. Why are you even talking like that? You would only do that if you're trying to present yourself like this hardcore course, Southern sheriff like Bull Connor that's going to swoop in and save all the flower white womanhood from these boogeyman black people that are coming in. That wasn't about trying to get to the bottom of anything. It wasn't even about a hearing. It was about trying to embarrass the people on that panel and wasting their time and making yourself look like the defender of the flower of white womanhood, like we're in the Deep South.